Hey guys, so a question that comes up quite often is kind of, I need a new laptop. Can you help me choose a new laptop? So I'm just going to show you the process I'd normally follow to help recommend a laptop for someone, just to look at the different features and the things that I think as a kind of techie IT person are the things that are important to look for when you're getting a new laptop. So I'm just going to go to PC World. Just as an easy kind of example for stuff to look at. So yeah, on PC World, let's go down to computing and let's go to all laptops. So the things that are really important are processor, memory, and storage. So the things that you really don't want to scrimp on are those three items. So you want a faster processor as you can get. You want as much memory as you can get, and ideally for storage, you want something called SSD. You don't want a hard drive. You want SSD, and the reason for that is hard drive is quite an old technology now, and it involves a spinning disk in effect to get the data off. SSD is like memory chips, so it's much quicker to access. There's no physical components. So you'll probably find you get less storage with SSD because it's a more expensive technology. However, you'll get a much faster experience on the laptop. So I'm just going to scroll down a little bit here. So this an example here. So this one's got a 256 gig SSD and 8 gig of RAM. That's an okay spec. That would be pretty good for most people. But importantly, it's got 8 gig of RAM. So I'd want to have at least that, at least 8 gig. Definitely don't ever want to get anything with 4 gig of RAM. I want 8 gig of RAM as a minimum. If I can get 16 gig of RAM, great. And then storage for the SSD, I want at least 256 gig on the hard drive. So as I said, RAM, so memory, RAM, memory, same thing. And storage are two of the key factors. The other one is the processor. So I would only tend to buy something with an Intel Core processor. i3 is the cheapest one, i5's middle, i7 is sort of top end. So ideally, you want to be, if you can get something with an i5, then that's kind of decent middle of the range processor. I wouldn't go for anything outside of the Intel i3, 5, or 7 range because they are solid processors. They should be nice and quick. So, our ideal minimum spec is going to be 8 gig of RAM, at least 8 gig of RAM, at least 256 gig of SSD storage, and at least an i3, ideally an i5 processor. They're the bits that I want to look for around kind of performance. So I start with those things, and then afterwards I can look at aesthetics. But most important thing first is to make sure this is going to be a quick laptop and it's going to last me for a good number of years. So looking at the aesthetic side of it, so the size and the build quality. So depending on what you want to do with it, if you're going to carry it around a lot, you might want to go for a slightly smaller laptop. So the example, so this one here, again, this Asus VivoBook, that's actually quite a large laptop. 15.6 inches is the diagonal line from the bottom left of the screen to the top right of the screen. So if you want to get a ruler out or a tape measure and measure 15.6 inches, that's going to give you an idea of the physical size of that laptop. That's quite big size to be carrying around. However, think about how often you are going to need to carry it around, and maybe if this is going to be your only computer and your only screen, actually you do want to go for a larger screen. So on the 15.6 inch side is kind of the larger screen size to give you just more comfort when you're working on it. And you probably find they'll go down to sort of 14-inch diagonal screen size, and that's kind of more of your kind of go in your bag, travel around with it kind of thing on the laptop. So yeah, as I said, they're the key things that I would recommend. Oh, and sorry, the last thing on aesthetics actually is is what the case is made out of. So if you can get one with an aluminium case or some sort of alloy metal case, then that's obviously going to be much more sturdy than a plastic case. So it probably won't mention if it's made out of plastic, but if it is an aluminium case or a metal alloy, then that's preferable because that's going to give you a more sort of sturdy laptop. So yeah, as I said, that's the sort of things I would normally look at, and I'd use just something like PC World because it will let me start to filter on stuff like this. So I can go and say, Right, processor I want, as I said, Intel I. So 3, 8, i3, i5. I mean, there is an i7, but that's going to be super expensive. So there's an i9, sorry, but that's going to be super expensive. So I've checked i3, i5, i7. Don't ever get Celeron. Don't get the Pentium. They're going to be slow. So these are the ones you want to go for on the processor, as I said at the beginning. Memory. So definitely don't go for 4 gig. Ideally, we want at least 8, if not 16. So I'm going to tick 8, and I'm also going to tick 16. And then storage type, I haven't ticked 32 because that's going to be super expensive. Actually, it's kind of, I guess, because I've been filtering down on these things now, I can actually only choose things that have SSD drives. At the beginning, I mentioned you want to have SSD drives for storage. So, yeah, cool. So I've got that. I'm going to sort by price, low to high. Cool. And so I'd be pretty happy with any of these laptops from a performance point of view now, because I've limited it to a good processor, decent amount of RAM, so this is kind of an easy way to start filtering through and looking at what you might like. One last thing actually to mention, so is on the screen size. So you want to have at least a full HD screen as an absolute minimum. You might see HD mentioned, but it needs to be full HD. So what that means is that's the number of dots on the number of pixels that make up the screen. So full HD is, I think, 1960, I think 1980 by 1080. So kind of those kind of dimensions. But that's what full HD is. There'll be ones higher than that called like quad HD and stuff like that. But as a minimum, you want a full HD screen. Anything lower than that, and you will find that you won't have enough space on the screen to put stuff on. So if I just scroll down to the specs of this one. So there we go, full HD. So it was 1920 by 1080, but that's as a minimum you want this sort of screen size on any laptop. Forgetting about the actual physical screen size, this is the number of dots that make up the screen, so the amount of detail that you can get on the screen. So yeah, as a minimum, we want full HD. Yeah, so as I said, that little filter kind of brought us onto something that had a good processor, decent amount of RAM, decent amount of storage. That looks like quite a nice laptop actually. So yeah, hopefully that helps. But that's the sort of key things that I would go through when I want to look for a new laptop for someone, if I need to recommend it for someone. So yeah, take care.